Thank you for tuning into Healing Race. In this video, Andre shares how he expects his life success and his lighter Black skin to lead people to doubt whether he has ever had to face racial bias in his life. And I ask him how he feels that some in the Black community will attribute his success more to his lighter skin than his individual initiative.
That leads us to discuss the roles that skin color and personal responsibility play in American success, and which of these factors deserves more attention in our society today. So let's get to that conversation now. Enjoy. I already know the blowback we're going to get for this because you see this light-skinned Black man sitting in a comfortable condominium and talking about his Costa Rican husband. How the fuck are you an equal? How, with a Stanford education, how has your life personally been done wrong? I can hear the blowback now.
You know what? It's really interesting about that is you tell your story about where you came from.
But you know what, Todd? People don't believe me. Even Marin doesn't believe how I grew up. She doesn't believe
I love
it.
when you say, I was just plucked out of.
It's one of the reasons. You know what, it's so funny. I was thinking about your mama the other day, actually, because Pretty Woman was on. And I'll never forget when I first went home with you. And you and I were just walking. You were showing me Beverly Hills, your neighborhood, Rodeo Drive. And we got back to your house. And your mom said, do you recognize any of it from Pretty Woman? I was like, oh, yes, I do. And I'm like, in my mind, I said, I recognize all of it from Pretty Woman. I'm like, lady, if you only saw what I lived in and where I come from, like, this is literally, it was like literally like a dream, a dream, you know? And so I always tell people, I said, what you see, the Maserati I drive a Maserati, but the Maserati I drive and the home that I live in, life did not start out this way. I am a class migrant. Not only me, my mother is a class migrant, right? Like, we pulled ourselves up from, to quote Tina Turner, what was not taught to us. We started life, my mother started life in an all Black inner city section. I started life when she had me at 16 years old, in a housing project that is to this day still stands. Mm-hmm. Only about a 15-minute drive from where I live now.
Yeah.
And people won't believe all of that. They're going to say, well, the equity has been bridged because you went to state, because you wouldn't believe how many people think that we have perfect lives just because we went to the schools we went to, or we have held the jobs that we've held.
Well, I think it gives you a new, I don't know what gives you a nuanced perspective, but perhaps your experience has given you some kind of nuanced perspective. I remember in one of the episodes you said, now I'm not going to say privileged because I know not all white people are privileged. And I know some people have worked very hard to get to where they are. Right.
Yes.
But that there's just an inequity of support, just more support. Right.
Yes.
And that there's something as a white person you don't have to contend with that a Black person has to contend with. Right.
Yes.
And so you have this kind of in the middle, you recognize people work hard because, I'm guessing, people don't believe you, right? Like
they don't.
You have, I don't know how I'm just going to use, because it's a cliche, the rags to riches, right? Story, but not, and maybe don't feel riches and maybe you weren't in rags, but you have the upward mobility story. You have the.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. The upward mobility story.
Yeah. And there are white people who have that story as well, right? But yet you also don't use that to deny, which I've seen some people do in the Black community, even deny that there are inequities that exist between white and Black people, right? Mm-hmm. They experience that upward mobility. And this is kind of where I thought you were coming from when you were when our White Lives Matter conversation, when you were talking about some Black people who have worked hard, aspired, and succeeded, and in some ways not acknowledging, seeing the wholeness of their experience, or at least the wholeness of the Black experience across.
Yes.
And you felt like you were taking both parts. You worked hard, you did well, you went to a great school, you've prospered as an individual, even if you want to prosper more. But you also know where you came from, right? And so I feel like you have that balanced, to me, you have that balanced viewpoint. And so I can understand you being in a tricky situation, in a tricky position, right? Being where you came from, as you say, people not believing it because, like, look where you are now, and people questioning how the Black experience in America, whether it has affected you, right? Because of what they now can see of, or hear about your life. So I don't know. It's interesting.
And also to the degree, because something that my Black friends have pointed out is they've seen clips of this, is that I'm light skinned, you're light skinned, you're light skinned. You know what that means, right? Well, you haven't had it as hard as others.
Yeah.
Remember our first conversation, I said, my sort of reception with white people has to do with how my physical appearance.
Yeah. And so I guess, and you said something really interesting, and I have a question about it, because you said at the end of that episode, you said, and that's the closest, the power, it was either that episode or another one, you said that there was kind of a power in having light skin. And you said, that's the thing that I could understand to being white. Now, what I would ask you is, how do you feel about people looking at your success and say, but you have light skin, but you have light skin, but you have light skin, as if
whatever, Todd,
that's the only reason you are where you are, right? How do you feel about that?
I forget how smart you are sometimes. I fell right into that intellectual trap. No, it's not
an intellectual trap. It's an emotional experience.
Yeah, and it's a very valid question. Okay. I don't feel either way. I cannot help my genetics the same way white people cannot help their genetics. But what I can help is social conditioning in the world, which is why I'm doing this show. Because if I just wanted to sit back with my little light-skinned self and go to parties and da-da-da-da with white friends, and trust me, I've done that. Then I don't have to make any contribution like this. I didn't have to even participate. But it's the very fact that I even wanted to do this show, is cognizant, and how can I say, as a recognition that, whatever benefit that may have come to me by being light-skinned has not necessarily been extended to all Black people. And I would at least like to open up the conversation to have that done. You know what I mean?
So I know, because we've seen it in the episodes, I know that you acknowledge how having light skin has benefited you, even though, as you say, you always remember you're still Black, right?
I am.
So we've heard you acknowledge that. What I'm asking you, is there not any little piece of you that when you share, or people see the successes that you've had, and the response is you're light skinned, right? Is there no response in you that says, yes, being light skinned has helped me, and I've worked hard, and I've come from a certain place to another place through how I've applied myself? Is there nothing that sparks in you that says it's not all about?
Well, thank you for clarifying. So no, there is a response in me that does acknowledge that because I even say it in the show, I say having lighter skin has allowed me to have easier relationships with white people. And so some of the things that have happened to some of my Black friends have never, ever happened to me. Yeah. So yes, I do acknowledge that my physical appearance has helped play a part in my success. However, number one, is not to the degree that white people's physical, helps to could play a part in their success, because I don't look white. I just look biracial, although I'm not biracial. And number two, I still want to echo my desire to extend whatever that benefit is. And I acknowledge there's a benefit. And I've even acknowledged that personally to friends, that there is a benefit. I want that extended to everyone. And it's hard for a lot of Black people to hear when I say that. And it's even hard for me to say it in this moment, that there is a benefit to being light skinned. But I mean, I've been radically honest throughout, so why not continue to be so? There is, we live in a world of how you look. And when you have white people at the top of the caste, I mean, we have a caste system in the US. And when those who align themselves closer to that, ideal in the highest caste, they're going to get, looked upon favorably. And that has happened to me at times in my life.
So
my mother even commented on it at lunch. What was that? Not this weekend, 2 weekends ago. So I took her to lunch for her birthday to a very, very posh, I like to go to posh restaurants, to a very, very posh restaurant. And the waiter the waiter happened to be a Caucasian, a white gentleman. And we were just like gay guy too. And, and we were just laughing and talking. And my mother's like, am I even at this table? Or whatever. And I was saying, and I looked just like this because I had just had a haircut 2 weeks ago. And I said, yeah. And she was like, you have a certain way about you where with your light skin, they find that more palatable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My mother commented on it at lunch.
Yeah. So I think there would be, so yes, maybe you would get some pushback or some interesting responses from the Black community and the things you've just said. Here's what I think you might get some pushback from, like a portion of the white community. I put forth kind of a dual tension in this kind of lighter skin experience, right?
Yes, I know.
One is the benefit, and you acknowledge it, and you heavily acknowledge it. And one is the detraction from other qualities of yourself that have led to your outcomes in life. You acknowledge that you've been benefited, but there's been a whole lot of other things that you've done as a human being to get to where you are, right? With, let's say, that extra support of being lighter. And I think there would be white people who wonder, even when coming back to it again and saying, I understand that, Andre, and I'm interested, do you have any of that feeling? And you said, yes, I do. And then you went right back to talking about the benefits. And they might say to you, Andre, like, why aren't you focusing a little bit more, putting a little more energy in I've worked hard to get to where I am. And, I know that, success is a community experience and I've been helped. But I also, like, my success is not simply a product of my lighter skin, right?
No, it's not.
They would wonder the difference in the energy you put between those
things. I can answer this question. Yeah. I can answer this question. So
maybe you're just humble and shy about it, or
no. Well, that sort of. But the reason for the difference is because so much of success in the United States hinges on being socially acceptable. Mm. And what my mother was highlighting at lunch is that I have a skin color that is socially palatable for a lot of people. So, yes, I have worked hard. But it would be remiss of me to say, okay, and there are dark-skinned Black people who've worked harder and who have done 10 times more than I have, right? And are mega successful. But you'd have to query those people about their experience. But part of leaning into talking about those benefits is to emphasize how much race is kind of overemphasized and appearance is overemphasized in the United States, right? And that's not to say all the other things aren't valid, but we live in a country where appearance matters. And, in so many ways, it dictates how much salary you make, how many interviews you get, all sorts of things. And I'm just saying, I'm openly acknowledging that I, to some, have an appearance that is preferable, irrespective of all the other things that I have.
So are you, so let me reflect back what I heard you say in like a different way and get your, sense of, is this how you feel or not? Because I think there'd be some people who wonder like why you would, or whether you think you are accepting a diminishment of your hard work by letting it lie, right? Letting it lie in some way that, hey, but you got lighter skin, because, there will be white people who
I can see that.
Who react to the racial conversation, sometimes because they think that simply talking about white and black as being determinative takes away from what you acknowledge. Like there are white people who have worked very hard for their success, and they want to say, but I have worked hard. Now, what the feedback to them would be, and you could work hard, but you could still have more support or less obstacles put in your way because you're white. Like those two things can both be the case, right?
Yeah, they can both be true.
Yeah. And so I guess I wonder, do you feel the need to emphasize so much more the acknowledgement of the benefit that you have by being light-skinned versus you pushing back against the detraction of just saying, of making it seem sometimes like it's just your light skin that allows you to have this success? Do you feel like, is that because you worry that talking too much about the personal responsibility for success would diminish the conversation about the benefit of light skin, that it would, that there's so unequal the conversation, the narrative around personal responsibility is so strong that you need to emphasize the other one that doesn't get as much time in the social community conversation that we have?
Well, I don't want to diminish it.
I know you diminish what?
I don't want to diminish the amount. I don't want to diminish the outsized role that appearance does play.
I know
that appearance plays in the support one receives to become successful.
And I wonder, let me put it in different words. I wonder if some white people, I don't think all white people, but some white people might say that maybe you're doing something in reverse that we critique white people of doing, which is that sometimes around the conversation of racism and the way that it plays a role in hindering lives, that to have, and we've talked about this before, to have that conversation diminishes the role of personal responsibility. And so you have this instinctive white reaction that says, yeah, but people work hard, white people work hard, and black people could work harder. There's this instinctive reaction, like to talk about race is to diminish the role of personal responsibility, right? And I wonder, I see
it slightly different. I see to talk about race is to show the outsized role that it plays. Like I see it just slightly differently, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So your focus on, right. So I was talking about what the white person what we would say to a white person who diminishes the role of racism, because they don't want to give too much time to it because they think it diminishes the role of personal responsibility and maybe the role that they think is played in their own lives, right?
Yes.
And what they might say to you is, or what they might wonder, I don't, what some white people might wonder is, are you doing the reverse where you worry to talk about personal responsibility and the way that has led to your own success would be in some way to diminish the conversation about how you're lighter skin?
The answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
It's yes. So because what I just said is I don't want to diminish the outside. I want to highlight the outsized role. Yeah. So the answer is yes. I'm doing the reverse, meaning to bring up personal responsibility for me diminishes what race plays in all of this, right? So the answer is yes.
So this is just to get a sense in your mind. So I get that motivation. I understand that motivation. I really am curious about how you feel about these factors in your life. I know you can't speak for all people, but in your life, you achieved. We won't talk about whether, we won't label you as success or not success. We had that conversation about what we determine, what we believe as being successful, right? But let's just say the success that you've had, right? What is the probability of achieving that success if you had darker skin in your mind?
Oh, I have no idea, because I don't know life from that perspective. I just know dark-skinned Black people who have been my personal friends and who've told me their stories, professionals, and I mean as adults, I mean even as children, Lord, I can tell you some story. Lord, yeah, woo, yeah. So I don't know life from a dark-skinned perspective. I can't speak to that, but I do have friends who are darker skinned Black people, and they've told me the things that they have gone through in their lives and in school settings, in grammar school, primary school, on through university and graduate school. And when people look at you, they feel something about your appearance, and your appearance matters to that person, and they choose whether or not to support you. Mm-hmm. It does. It really does.
So we don't have to put a percentage on it, but your general sense is that probability would decrease because of the kinds of things that you heard and would expect to experience some more of if you had darker skin. And so
I would wonder, for me, if I had darker skin, much darker skin, I would wonder how many people would have been indifferent to my success, my desire to be successful. And remember, success isn't in like so many things. It's in the degrees we get. It's how when we buy a home, when we take our children to the doctor, because how I'm surviving, I guess defining success is having a thriving life. Like, for example, like I was COVID positive, right? And I did a virtual visit with my doctor, and he prescribed this medication, which I swear to God saves lives. It worked with one, and I took all doses of this medication, but with one dose, I felt right as rain. And I texted a friend, and I was like, "Girl, this shit is real. They need to send this to African countries because it will clear your COVID up like that." And the person said, healthcare inequity is very, very real. And I happen to have a doctor who's been an advocate for me for the past 20 years, despite poor eating habits. And I have to wonder, had that, because I had another friend who said, "Ooh, I have a Black doctor and I'm so excited." So it made me wonder, because my doctor is not Black, but my doctor has still been my advocate for 20 years. It makes me wonder that are Black people going to non-Black doctors who are not advocating for their optimal health outcome? We have, like, for example, Black people are prone to high blood pressure, prone to kidney problems, all these different things. And my doctor, since my 20s, has been really aggressive about monitoring those things. It's one of the reasons I'm in health now, right? But what if I were, a Black person going to a non-Black doctor who's largely just dismissive until something major happens? Then, you see how that's a huge difference in life, how my COVID was cleared in an afternoon almost, and other people have to suffer all because of a doctor's application of their expertise. And it was the doctor, I didn't insist that he prescribe anything. I just we were corresponding about other stuff, year-end medical stuff, about other things. And he said, "Well, if you want, I can prescribe something." And I said, "Okay, so I don't have to suffer through the symptoms." Cleared it up like that.
So for you, it sounds like you tend to focus a lot more on, I've noticed in our conversations, not that you don't say they exist, but not the things that inhibit success, but the lack of the supports that move success forward. And so your sense is that, yes, you've done well and done right by yourself in achieving success. There are things that you did in terms of working hard and otherwise that that have helped you along the way. And those things coming to leading you to flourish in the way that you are were aided by the extra set of supports you feel you got by having lighter skin.
That's a plausible argument. That is a plausible.
Is that your argument? Is that your general sense?
That's my general sense. That's my general sense. Is I compare my lived experience being Black in all these domains of my life, medicine, profession, social, whatever, to my friends' lived experience in those same domains. And those friends are darker skinned than I.
And so you want to say, yes, personal responsibility in whatever its forms matters, but it gets enough of the light of day. And so when you think of these factors as they've combined to help you to flourish again in the way that you are now, you want to focus heavily on those levels of support and then the inequities of support racially, because not that you think they're determinative solely of success, but it's a neglected factor in your mind. Yes. In being taken care of. And that's why you focus on it. And
yes.
Even when getting responses from people that, could feel and could be seen as diminishing your own personal volition and motivation and
yes.
efforts.
I mean, clearly I worked hard to be in a financial position where I have insurance, because I didn't pay for the medication. It's all covered. But and that in and of itself is a blessing, right? There are tons of people in the United States who have to pay for the medication they take. I don't. It's all a part of, employee sponsored, whatever. So I see the situation as my hard work and my, achievement at work has allowed me to be able to reap this benefit. But, this one can argue that, being light skinned has helped play a part in that success at work. Maybe you're more socially palatable. And then also when you extend that work success into other domains of your life, maybe it does beget more and more support. The best way to receive support is to have support already.
Thank you for watching this episode of Healing Race, and stay with us for a scene from our next video.
If you want to see more conversations like the one you just watched, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with friends and family, and like and comment on the video below.
If you'd like to be a guest on one of our episodes and have an open, real conversation about race, email us at guests@healingraceshow.com.
And if there are topics you think we should cover, we'd love to hear them. So please email your ideas to topics@healingraceshow.com.
As always, thanks for your support. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Now, here's a scene from our next Healing Race. What is your perception of what cancel culture means? What is your perception of what people find problematic with cancel culture? And where do you lie on what part of this thing called cancel culture is positive and what part is negative?
To watch the rest of that episode, go ahead and click the video below me.
To see a different compelling Healing Race episode, you can click the video below me. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.